Hello, my name is Rick, and we're going to be talking about our patient Henry. I'm going to discuss the situation surrounding him and his different diagnoses, as well as how to treat and how they all tie in to his hyperkalemia. And I'm also going to be using my camera mounted on my car, that way we can take a little trip as I talk about our patient. This way you'll have something pretty to look at when I don't have any actual footage on the screen. Alright, let's start. A man presented to the emergency room after being found collapsed in the produce aisle. This is what happened to his body. As he awoke, he became confused and started swinging violently. Upon closer examination, it seemed that he was incontinent of urine and also had a slight scent of alcohol on his clothing. Now, let's fast forward to the emergency department, where he's able to recall what happened before his collapse in the grocery store. He said he felt a slight discomfort in his chest, some chest pain. This is called angina. He also had a very irregular and erratic heartbeat. This is called an arrhythmia. He also said he was suffering from shortness of breath, but upon closer examination, it seemed to have a certain pattern, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, let's go over Henry a little bit more. You see, Henry states that he's recently widowed. His wife of 30 years had just recently passed away 6 months ago. He states that she did all the cleaning and cooking and basically everything. He currently lives alone. He says that he has a son, but he hasn't seen him in years. He has no idea what he's been up to. You see, this is a bad situation, as we also see that he has a history of being a heavy drinker ever since he was a teenager. With the recent passing of his only social support, he states he has been drinking heavier and more consistently throughout the day, usually hard liquor. Now, let's take a look at the alcohol and see how it plays into his situation. The hard liquor that he's been drinking is more concentrated and has less water. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, is released by the body in response to dehydration. It acts in the kidneys by pulling water from the intravascular space into the cells. That way you retain more fluid. The hard liquor Henry has been drinking has an effect on ADH, where it suppresses the effectiveness in the kidneys. With Henry's constant consumption of hard liquor and poor choice drinks such as Coca-Cola with no actual water being consumed, he is becoming dehydrated. Now, Henry also has been diagnosed with hypertension. He has a family history of hypertension, as he states on both parents' side were diagnosed. This means that he was predisposed. Chances of him getting hypertension were increased, not only because of his family history, but because of his diet, which is very poor and rich in fats and sodium. He's currently prescribed an ACE inhibitor, captopril, for his hypertension. ACE inhibitors act on inhibiting the release of angiotensin, which is a hormone released from the adrenal cortex. Angiotensin acts in the body by stimulating the release of aldosterone in the body. Aldosterone is a hormone that helps pull water intracellularly into the vascular space and is excreted along with other ions such as potassium. Since angiotensin is blocked, it cannot stimulate the release of aldosterone, which cannot help excrete sodium or the continually rising potassium in his body. Along with the hypertension, Henry was also diagnosed with heart failure about a year ago. This makes sense because the hypertension he's had for years now put a huge strain on his cardiovascular system. Over time, he developed something called cardiomegaly, which is an irregular enlargement of the heart. As the heart continues to have an increased workload, it becomes larger and the chambers become thicker. It gradually becomes more insufficient in pumping blood and slowly fails. Henry was also prescribed spironolactone, which is a potassium-sparing diuretic. This was prescribed by his previous doctor to help with his hypertension and heart failure. Spironolactone acts by rushing to the receptor sites before aldosterone can in the kidneys. The aldosterone is therefore unable to excrete the potassium in the body, further increasing his potassium levels. There is one more diagnosis that can be talked about. Henry is a type 1 diabetic. Upon further assessment, Henry states that he did in fact drink alcohol today before he headed off to the store. He was asked this since, when they found him unconscious, he did have a scent of alcohol on his clothing. Henry also states that he's unsure whether he had taken his insulin the past few days because he's been in a constant drunk state. This is clearly a red flag. Remember when I mentioned the breathing earlier and how it had a certain pattern to it? That was Kussmaul's breathing. His respirations were very deep and labored. This is due to him and his body's natural response to try and get rid of the excess acid that is building up in his body. His breath was also noted to have a fruity scent to it. Henry is showing key signs of DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. In DKA, the potassium ions are shifted with the hydrogen ions. Potassium moves intravascularly while hydrogen is exchanged and moves intracellularly. This leads to yet again another factor in hyperkalemia. Now that we know all this, how do we confirm it? Well, we can get his ECG read. In his state, his ECG would be showing peak T waves with an extended PR interval. This is a hallmark for progressing hyperkalemia. His CBG would also be taken and would be read at 440, which is elevated. You can check his ABGs and confirm that he is in fact in a metabolic acidotic state, and a urine test to help confirm ketonuria, the presence of ketones in the urine. All of Henry's conditions are compounding together, continuously raising his potassium in his blood. Too much potassium is very dangerous. The arrhythmias caused by this can lead to sudden death. Let me put it into perspective. Potassium chloride is used in high doses for lethal injection into the heart. Potassium is used in our body to help relax muscles. Now let's not forget that the heart is a muscle, and too much of it will cease it from beating. Let's also not forget the medications that he was prescribed that increase his serum potassium levels. So, how is Henry going to be treated? First would be calcium gluconate, or calcium chloride. It's administered first to help reduce the arrhythmias in the heart. This will help prevent the random stopping of his heartbeat. His ECG should read normal within 5 minutes of administration. Next up would be insulin, but not just any insulin, regular insulin, because we're going to be giving it IV. With the administration of insulin, potassium and hydrogen switch places. Potassium moves into the cells while hydrogen moves into the vascular space. This helps lower the concentration of potassium. Next would be bicarb, which would provide a shift of potassium similar to how the insulin acted in the body. Albuterol can also be given in this situation. The last step would be fluid replacement, to help replace the fluid lost from DKA and fix the dehydration, and also further lower the serum potassium levels. After treatment, Henry's vitals and labs become stable, and our ride is over. I'm going to leave any patient education and recommendations to my team members. Thank you everyone for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed the video.